I'm here. I'm representing Global Health Invest. I'm the founder and the CEO of this company. I started a journey 2 years ago, setting up this company, establishing it, and get the financial authority from the authorities in Denmark. What is this kind of investment fund? I have been asked that question many, many times during this 2-year period where I was traveling around in Denmark, meeting investors and trying to explain what is actually this kind of investment instrument. And this is an open-ended mutual fund, so you can actually invest your money. It's liquid. It means that you can actually trade it every day, every minute. So it's very, let's say, easy for people to invest in. There's no lockup. You can take out the money any day. And that's, I think, is really important in these markets. How does it really work? It doesn't work like a stock, a share, when you see it on the stock exchange. So that means you can actually invest your money and it will not influence the price because the price is actually reflecting the net asset value of the fund. So you can, if you have 150 Swedish kroner or you came with 150 million Swedish kroner, it will not impact the price of this fund when you buy it on the stock exchange. I think that's very important for you to know because there's a lot of funds where you cannot trade them and you're actually being locked up for several years. This is, of course, a disclaimer. It's a forward-looking statement about this fund. So this is just an orientation about this fund. But I've been investing in the global healthcare sector when I was at Danske Bank for 20 years. I was responsible for our global investments. And my strategy, there's many strategies out there that can actually work. And my philosophy and investment strategy is to select global companies. They should also be highly profitable. And because they're highly profitable, they can actually afford to invest in R&D. They can actually afford also to look around in the horizon and see interesting opportunities arise. And they can actually in-license or they can buy, they can do M&A. But they have the competence, they have the global scale, they have the opportunities to really reap the benefit of being truly global. So it says I have 20 years of experience. I've been in the financial community for 25 years, but I'm investing in global healthcare for 20 years. And not many of you know what does it really mean to be a, let's say, portfolio manager managing money. But it means that you both, of course, look at share prices every day. But it is also important to travel out in the world, meeting companies, meeting CEOs, finding out if you can really trust them or not. Also, what is their views on capital allocation and what is their really, let's say, their priorities? Do they just want to build a big company or do they really want to provide shareholder value to the shareholders? And that is what is really important. So what I'm doing, I'm traveling a lot. 50 days, more or less, in US, 10 days in Europe. I'm going to medical and scientific conferences to actually track what's actually out there in the horizon. What could be a new molecule popping up that could probably change standard of care in both cancer diseases, but also within diabetes or cardiovascular diseases. So I think it's really important for me to do my own due diligence. I can hear you also facing a lot of due diligence every day. I'm trying to do it myself, so I'm trying to talk to the leading KOLs in the world and finding out how does these treatments, how do they really stack up, how do they compare? And it also gives me a feeling for what would be the adoption. And it's so important when we're going to do, let's say, investment, is that what is really the commercial potential of this new therapy or treatment. It's super important to find out which doctors are really enthusiastic about this new treatment and how quickly can this treatment really be taken up and be given to patients. So that's why I spend a lot of time traveling around, talking to other investors, but also talking to doctors. I have only 25 stocks in the portfolio. It's a very concentrated stock portfolio, I can tell you. When I wanted to set up this company, it was really important for me to have the right investment structure, because there's a lot of funds out there where there's, let's say, too many stocks. It also means that there's too many eggs in the basket, and some of these eggs are not very good. So you should try to, let's say, really focus on what is the best of the best. So that's what I'm trying to do on everyday basis. So try to evaluate what could actually be the best stocks that can provide an attractive return. And those companies that are in my portfolio, it's on average, they're supposed to grow 11% growth in earnings per year, and also deliver 1% in dividend yield. So it's super important for me to really look at these companies. What can they really grow in terms of earnings? They are not dividend payment, let's say, shares. I really like management that can really look out in the world and see opportunities, and they can actually allocate more money so they can grow even faster. But enough about Global Health Invest. I would like now you to, let's say, fly up in the helicopter, take up the and see the view, and see what is actually the problem here in our healthcare sector. And maybe if there's one number you should try to remember, this is the number here, 5% today. What does it really mean? The 5% is those patients that actually takes up this number of our healthcare budget. So it's 5% of the patients taking up 50% of our healthcare budget. That's a lot. And we know that we are facing a healthcare crisis in the world. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But it's super important if we can really find out who is those 5% of these patients that can actually, that cost is 50% of the healthcare budget. This is a pretty big number. So if we can really treat these patients, we can actually take a lot of cost out of the system. So as an investor, I look at what is the problem in the world that we're facing. We are facing a lot of problems, but can we really find solutions or treatments in the world where we can save costs? It's also about making money, but it's also hugely important if we can find those treatments, therapies, digital health technologies, and so on, that can really alleviate this problem. Can we try to characterize these 5% patients? Yes, we can. This is data based on US numbers. I was talking to some Danish CEOs in the life science and pharma sector, and they said, Claus, this is actually the same number that we can see here in Denmark. So what can we see here? We can see that these patients, these 5%, they have hypertension to a much larger degree than the overall population. We can also see that they have elevated cholesterol. We can see they have diabetes. They have also suffering from cancer, depression, and anxiety. So we know exactly what these patients, what they suffer from. So we should really try to find therapies, treatments, interventions that can really help to bring these patients in a much better control of their disease. Because in this way, we can actually save a lot of costs for our healthcare system. So I'll just go through a number of challenges we are facing in the healthcare industry, and it's also open up the door for opportunities. We all know that we are actually facing an aging population. This is a pretty big number. From 50 years, we're going to see that the average age is going to increase up to 76 years over, let's say, this period from 2020 to 2040. This is a pretty big number, so it's not only, let's say, here in Sweden and Denmark, and I will come back to that, but it's a global challenge that we are facing, we are seeing an aging population, so that means there will be a lot of opportunities or also challenges for healthcare system to manage these patients coming in. They need better pension, they need better treatment, they will take up a lot of resources in the world. And what is the problem here? And this is not new numbers. I've taken these data from World Bank 2023. This is the last updated number, but this is not a new problem. I think you have heard about this in Sweden also. We are talking a lot about it, that we are facing a huge increase in patients, in people that are above 85. We can see it actually grows more or less 4 to 5% every year. So that means that there's a lot of healthcare systems and facilities that needs to accommodate more patients that are flowing in every year. We can also see that the plus 65 is growing more or less also 2% every year. So it means there's 2% more elderly people coming in that need care, both in the healthcare system at the doctor, primary physician. And the problem is we are not seeing any increase in the working population. So it means we are not seeing any increase in the number of people that is going to make an income and pay tax and pay for the 65 and above. So this comes to the next challenge that we are facing here, that the number of people, if we divide them, we can see that it goes from 3.5 down to 2.5. It's actually a decrease of 30%. So what does it really mean? It means that in Denmark, we are discussing that we are going to see a cut in welfare services, visits from nurses and so on, by 30%. So imagine if you have grandparents, parents that need a visit 3 times a week, that will be cut down to 2 visits per week, or from 3 visits per day to 2 visits per day. So we need to face this challenge because it means also that we're going to adopt new technologies for people above 65, because there's not enough people that are skilled also to really take care of the population above 65. And that is a huge problem, and we really need to look into what technologies can really alleviate this problem. Otherwise, we are going to face, and we are facing, a huge challenge, because this can cause an increase in tax rates. And I don't think politicians really like to increase taxes, but they are under huge pressure because there's so many more people entering this plus 65 group. So, and they can also vote. So there's a huge pressure also on taxes. If we move on to another challenge also, we know that we are facing an obesity pandemic globally. And we can see that actually the share of obese people is going to increase from 14% to 20% just over a 10-year period. And this is data from the World Obesity Atlas 2023. So that is an increase of 3% per year, an increase of obese patients. So that's a challenge, because our healthcare system needs to accommodate this flow of patients with comorbidities and so on that is coming also and putting our healthcare system under pressure. And that's why, of course, we are looking at an obesity market that can be really, really big in numbers, because there's a lot of patients that need to be, or could actually have a healthcare improvement, health outcome improvement, if they were treated with anti-obese medication. But of course, that is extra money, and a lot of budgets in the healthcare world don't have these budgets. So of course, these healthcare medicine, the GLP-1s and so on, they are facing, of course, a lot of pricing pressure around the world, because that's a huge problem that we need to take care of eventually. And we don't have a really clear definition of who needs to be treated, being obese and so on, but the Lancet Commission will come out in the next couple of months. It's like 80 experts in the world, and they are coming out with a clinical definition of what is obesity. And that will be, let's say, the first really discussion point for talking to healthcare people and also doctors, because now they really have a definition of what is an obese person. It's not only a talk about BMI, but also more clinical biomarkers, so we can really find out which patients need treatment and which patients do not need treatments. So that's really going to be interesting in the next couple of months to look out for, because obesity is actually not recognized as a disease in many countries. It's just like diabetes 30 years ago. Diabetes was also really not recognized as a disease, which we're going to talk about now. It was not recognized as a disease. It was more about, let's say, lifestyle intervention. But that view has changed, of course, over the last 30 years. And I think it will change also for obesity. We are just starting to think about how should we think about obesity, also how should we treat obesity. It's not only just a short-term intervention, but also a more continuously treatment that we need to face. But the problem here with diabetes is that it's growing still in the world. It's not growing as fast as obesity. It's only growing 1.6% per year. It's still a lot of people. And the problem with diabetes is that it's very, very costly to society. If we look at the US healthcare budget, 15% of that healthcare budget is related to diabetes. That's a pretty big number. But if we also include all the comorbidities with diabetes, it's actually increasing from 15% up to 25%. So it's 1/4 of the healthcare budget that is being used to treat diabetes patients. And it's a really big mystery to many that a lot of people suffering from diabetes, they are not taking their medication. That's also a lot of people that forget to take the medication, and then there's a lot of people actually taking the medication. But can we increase that number that really takes the medication continuously? Then we can actually avoid a lot of the very serious complications that is really costly to our healthcare system. I didn't bring this table, but if we look at the healthcare visits in hospitals, between 20 and 40% of the healthcare visits in hospitals, they are actually related to diabetes. So it can be a lot of different departments in the hospital that is facing more and more people coming in with serious complications. It can be blindness, it can be amputations, it can be Alzheimer's potentially, or other neurological diseases. So it's really putting a lot of pressure on our system, and we have the medication. We really have the medication that can really reduce this. In the scientific journal Lancet, there was an article in September 2021 that really was let's say, groundbreaking and really changed the view how should we look at diabetes, because it was all about weight management. And that article, with some of the leading KOLs in diabetes, they mentioned that if we have a weight loss of 15%, so 15%, then we can actually reverse diabetes. And of course, that was a breakthrough in how we should think about diabetes, but also obesity. Because now we can actually treat diabetes, we can treat obese patients. If we get them a weight loss of 15% or above, we can actually reverse the type 2 diabetes. And if we reverse type 2 diabetes, we can actually also avoid a lot of the costs in our hospitals and also of the doctor's time in the primary physician's office. So we are facing a lot of challenges, but we are also having a lot of opportunities, and we really should think about doing something about it. One problem is also that we're facing is that we are getting older, and the prevalence of Alzheimer's is increasing with age, and we are facing this aging population, so we'll see more and more people suffering from Alzheimer's. Is that a big problem? Because when we look at those numbers, 26 million in OECD countries doesn't sound really like a lot, and it will go up to 46 million in 2040. But if we look at US numbers, the Alzheimer population, because they are really, they need really to be taken care of really intensely. It's about 1.5% of the GDP of US that these patients cost. If we also include that all the family members, the relatives, need also to take care of these patients. If we include everything, one estimate I've seen is 3%. And this number is just going up because we are going to see more and more people with Alzheimer's disease if we're not finding something that can slow it down or can actually see or cause the disease to reverse. So this is also a huge problem. So what is the solution to these problems that I faced here mentioned? I think this is the word we have also talked a lot about today, is triage. That is just segmentation with another word. We need to find out which patients do we really need to focus on. If we can save a lot of money, we need to have a really good look at which patients should we spend money on and resources. And this, of course, needs to take place. We need to have data-driven decision-making. We cannot do this without data. And of course, those companies that can really aggregate those data, use it, and really create insightful interpretations, that we can really help to drive solutions. And we have to look at different things. We have to, when we look at triage, we have to find out what could be the likelihood of an expected outcome if we actually treat these patients. Is there going to be an outcome, or is there not going to be an outcome? We need to find out which patients does it really work, this medication, or is it just a waste of time and waste of money? We also need to find out, because our healthcare system is under pressure a lot. So we need to find out which treatments can actually expect the whole healthcare system to reduce the cost base. Because they will get reimbursement immediately if they can really create cost savings to the system. And of course, if we're looking at a market like US, it's a problem in Europe to make more money if you have the government as a client, because they have really fixed budgets. So they would like to see cost savings. But if you're going to US, there's a lot of private operators of different hospitals and clinics, and they would like to earn more money. So it's also important when we look at different products and different treatments, what could be the expected revenue potential. But we need to really select which patients and not just believe that we can just treat everybody. We need to have data that can really back up so the healthcare authorities can really make good decisions. And we, of course, need to look at this across the whole healthcare sector. We need to look at how do we actually provide the diagnosis of this patient. Do we have biomarkers? Are we going to see more and more use of digital biomarkers? So it can be from wearables, so we can actually select or gather data if a patient is actually seeing symptoms of becoming a Parkinson's disease patient or an Alzheimer's disease patient. So there's a lot of data we can actually use to both provide the diagnosis, but also to select the patients that we really need to focus on. Because we are looking also to find out who should we treat, which patients are we going to really treat, which patients can really provide a good outcome or can see a good outcome or expect a good outcome. Because we cannot necessarily treat everybody in our healthcare system. We are facing a lot of scarce resources right now. And the same thing goes with care in the hospital. We also need to find out which patients do we really need to have in the hospital. Which patients do we really need to look at intensely? Because we're going to see this reversal of patients because it's super expensive to be in the hospital. In Denmark, for instance, we are seeing a lot of patients being, let's say, put into a room, one patient, and that takes a lot of resources instead of there was probably 4 patients in the same room. And I think the healthcare authorities have discovered that this is a huge problem. In Denmark, it's a huge challenge to have personal, because that needs to be a personal, really, at the bedside. So we need to find solutions, and we need to find digital solutions that can monitor the patient. And we also need to find solutions where we can actually do the segmentation and find out who can we actually just be monitoring at home. So we need more devices and data to really find out which patients can we just be treated or being surveyed at home. We have to look at the home also at the place where we can actually prevent a lot of serious events. So we also need to look at which patients can we actually treat in order to prevent an event taking place so that the patient needs to go into the hospital. And we need patients to be involved. We need the patients to participate in this. And it's not everybody that is really motivated to really participate in this self-monitoring. So we need to find out what is the characteristics of these patients that really would like to participate and try to avoid an event going forward. So that's also data. I think we can use a lot of data to analyze which patients are more motivated than other patients. And that's because we are going to look, if we look into the hospital, more and more we talk about a digital twin. We can have a lot of biomarkers. We can have a lot of blood biomarkers. We can find out more or less how can this patient be treated just from analyzing the blood. And we have very good data from the UK Biobank also. We can do a lot of, let's say, predictions of which patients will really be these sick patients that can have really, really serious complications. So we can use all the data also to predict, and I think that's super important going forward, that we need to gather all these data. Also in the hospital, we can use AI or machine learning, but we can use this data to really take action. So there's of course, some solution providers. This is just a few of the names that is in the front, because we need to view healthcare as a lot of companies that can actually provide really important solutions. If it is when we talk about prevention, or if we talk about providing medicine or medical treatments. There's also some some companies that provide, of course, treatment or surveillance. United Health Group is a very, very big health insurance provider in US, but they have also bought a lot of clinics and health, just emergency clinics. And they are, of course, trying to optimize the treatment of these patients. There's also, of course, some companies down there in the bottom that really provide, let's say, the backbone of the whole system, both for labs and and other things. So I think this is just a brief overview of what is in the Global Health Invest portfolio. This is the final slide. I think we know that the healthcare sector faces really tremendous challenges, and the Global Health Invest tries to seek how to exploit this and provide a good financial return. Thank you.